All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Road to 18-inch arms. I think this is episode 9, or is it 8? I'm going to have to double check. But either way, making some progress on arms. A quick update here. I'm officially up to 17 and 5/8. So nothing crazy, but up an eighth of an inch since the start of the series, and it's been just under 2 months. So for the stage I'm at in lifting, I'll absolutely take that. It shows that what I'm doing is working. I just have to keep doing what I'm doing and stay patient. It's not going to be a quick road to 18 inches, but I might try a couple new things in the coming months, see if I can speed up progress. But overall, I'm pretty happy with where I'm at for now. So, for anyone else wondering, I know I get these questions all the time about my stats, height, and weight, stuff like that. My height is still 5'9". That hasn't really changed much since the start. And my weight is 198 to 199. It kind of fluctuates between that. So I'm not really trying to gain weight, but I'm definitely not trying to lose weight. I'm kind of in a weird happy medium between a bit of a recomp and a super lean bulk. I have quite a bit of diet fatigue, and it's not like I'm lean enough to where not being at a proper surplus will limit my gains. I'm pretty okay with being in roughly maintenance or a little bit above. So I've gained roughly about a pound and a half since starting the series about 2 months ago. So very, very lean bulk. I just don't think I'm lean enough to have to be worried about being in a surplus consistently. So if I notice that my gains plateau and they stall out and whatnot, I'll look for signs of recomping. So that would be my waist shrinking down while my muscle measurements remain the same. That's a pretty good sign that you're losing fat. If your weight's maintaining, so of course you're recomping in that situation. And then, of course, if my waist is maintaining and visually I'm not losing any fat, then of course I want my arm measurements to be increasing. So either one of those I'd be happy with. Technically, with the recomp, if I lean out, then I would probably maintain my arm size, maybe grow a little bit, but then I would probably continue to bulk once I get lean enough to where the recomp might stop working, or I just don't want to be in that lean of a body fat percentage. So with all that being said, I had a couple interesting questions that I want to answer today, and then I had another topic about just bulking in general and being in a bit of a higher body fat percentage and really just kind of embracing the long-term mentality, but I'll touch on that once I get through these questions. So the first one was, do you measure your arms pumped or mid-workout? And this is surprisingly the most common question that I've had since starting the series. I would never recommend measuring your arms pumped. You can for fun, if you just want to see what the biggest possible measurement you can get is during a workout having a pump, go for it by all means. But that's not a true arm measurement. That's inflated quite literally. Uh, it's not a reliable thing because one, the pump doesn't actually last. It goes away within 10, 20, I don't know, 30 minutes after your workout. So it's a temporary thing. Um, it's like going and running a mile and then saying, oh, my heart rate's 150. Well, what's your resting heart rate? That's the proper one to measure. So it's the same with arm measurements. What's your resting arm measurement? So the way I recommend doing it is just measure your arms in the morning fasted. If you're dehydrated, you can have some water, maybe a quick snack or something, but that probably won't impact too much. But yeah, you don't want to be pumped at all. That's just going to artificially inflate your measurement, and then you'll just be disappointed whenever you measure without a pump. So with that said, not the biggest deal, but for the sake of tracking progress and just being transparent to other people in the community, I think we should all be measuring our arms flexed but not pumped up because that will add a little bit of size. So, and when I say add size, it's of course temporary size. It's not a real thing. It's not worth measuring. So, couple other questions. The first one that I want to answer here is a guy. I don't think I can pronounce his name on here, but he says, what's the reason you let your elbows go down in JM press rather than keep them up like how JM describes you should do it in his tutorial? Just preference, or is it for any specific purpose? So when it comes to my JM press technique, and this is actually perfect timing. Wow, I'm impressed with myself. It's coming right up here. So basically with the JM press, what I'm aiming to do here is get my elbow between my shoulder and my wrist at the bottom of the movement. So your wrist and your elbow will drop simultaneously on the descent, with your wrist going double the speed of your elbow. If your elbow is above your wrist at the bottom, it's a little bit more like an extension or a skull crusher than it is a press. It's still a hybrid, but it's biased towards the extension. If your elbow is dropped down to or below your shoulder and your forearms are at a big slant at the bottom, that's a bit more of a press. It's still a hybrid because it's not the cleanest press you can do from an efficiency standpoint, but it's also going to be biasing the press more just because of your joint positioning. So what I'm aiming to do here is get my elbow directly between my wrist and my shoulder at the bottom. This will, one, get me the biggest stretch I possibly can of my triceps, particularly the lateral and medial heads, and it will bias the resistance profile so there's not only the biggest stretch there, there's also the most tension. So this is 210 pounds of pure force going into my triceps in a position where most people never get any tension, even if they do go through that range of motion, like an overhead extension or a push down. You're not getting that tension at the bottom here. You can see, even if you look at my technique on this overhead extension, if you look at the resistance profile, it's not actually that challenging in the bottom. I'm getting down nice and low, but you'll see it's most challenging in the mid-range when there's a 90-degree angle between my forearm and my upper arm. And you can see this as I approach failure, where the sticking point is right there in that mid-range. That's where it gets hardest. Even the lockout's pretty tough on this, but that's probably a bit more individual. So that's basically my goal with the technique on the Smith JM press. I do always recommend doing them that way. A couple other things for technique cues. A lot of people are interested in where to position your elbows. This doesn't matter too much. I do find that aiming for roughly a 45-degree flare out from your side is kind of the sweet spot. If they're flared out too much, sometimes your shoulder mobility can limit this or limit your output a little bit. And sometimes I do find that your chest and shoulders tend to activate a little bit more. They're probably a little bit more leveraged when you're flared out a bit more. But with that being said, you don't have to keep them tucked all the way in by your sides. You're just going to be limited by mobility, and you're going to limit your force output with that too. And then as far as bar path, basically, you want to find a position to where you can let your elbows be set up between your wrist and shoulder at the bottom. So as I was mentioning earlier, you want to figure out where your wrist and your grip ends up in this position rather than reverse engineering it. But what I would say is usually chin level, so dropping the bar to your chin is going to be the sweet spot for that. You can do JM presses with a barbell and a Smith machine. I didn't notice too big of a difference because I have done both variations. Now that I'm going much heavier, I would assume that the Smith machine does feel a bit better. So if you have access to a Smith, I would recommend that first. But if you have a barbell, it's 100% still worth doing, absolutely. I would just make sure when you're doing it with the barbell, the cue I like to use for this is pretend you're in a Smith machine. What I mean by that is pick a spot on the ceiling, aim for that spot, pretend you're in a Smith. So go directly up and down, stay vertical, try not to let the bar track forwards or back because you have that freedom for your body to recruit bigger, stronger muscles like your chest, which is right next door in this movement. And it's easy to press in more of an arc and come down a little bit and get your chest activated and use your chest's power as you approach failure, which would keep your triceps away from failure. So pretend you're in a Smith, press as vertically as you can, and you'll be good to go from there. Don't overthink it either. Just do the best you can. Aim to get a really good stretch on the triceps, of course. So the other topic that I wanted to cover today, I was just thinking about this a little bit kind of last night. I couldn't fall asleep. I was just kind of thinking of topics I wanted to talk about today. And one thing that kind of keeps coming into mind is it's something that you hear. Sorry if you can hear my cats, by the way. They're just running around chasing each other, beating the crap out of each other. So, yeah, looks like a little slap fight's about to go down. But back to the point. So this point's about bulking and kind of having just a longer-term plan and vision with your training overall. One thing that I think I show pretty well on my channel is bulking and allowing being at a higher body fat percentage to be a part of your training just to be more productive in terms of muscle growth overall. One thing that I don't talk about enough on the channel is just that. So one thing that I am glad that I did was start the channel before I was at my peak. I started the channel when I was probably roughly an intermediate lifter. I'm not saying I'm advanced or anything now, but it was clear that I still had a decent amount of progress left in the tank to make. And I think I still have a decent ways to go. How much that is up for me to find out. Who knows? But what you're seeing is you're seeing me go through a proper bulk, and you're seeing me get to a body fat percentage that generally isn't ideal for most people in this community or in the industry. It's an industry that's obsessed with being shredded all the time and always being super lean, and I think that's cool to an extent, but I think it's also flawed because you see people that make all of their progress. A lot of these guys are on drugs. They make a bunch of progress, build a bunch of muscle, and then they get shredded. And then they start posting. So you see these influencers that make all this progress, even if they're posting. They have no followers, nobody cares about their content because they're not super lean, they're not shredded. This somewhat applies to me. I mean, obviously my channel is very small, but it's not oriented around my physique as much as it is the information. But I'm talking about general people that are going to have the big following. So your typical influencers that are posting their physique and posting how shredded they are. Once you get to the end product, that's when the eyes get on them because they're at the end goal. And this leads to a bit of a false sense of reality when you think that all the biggest guys are just shredded all the time. They've always been super lean. And it's not like we're not aware of this. I mean, yeah, there's probably a few beginners on this channel that this is kind of new for, realizing that a lot of these big guys that are shredded all the time on Instagram and TikTok actually did bulk to get to where they're at. They don't show that process. And even if they do show that process, nobody's watching it because nobody cares about it. They just care about the end product. So I think it's important to just remember and just to kind of check in and accept that bulking is usually going to be the way to go. And you don't have to be in a caloric surplus, but you can't make crazy gains and get to your genetic potential when you're in a very lean state. You're seeing what I'm doing right now, going up to roughly 20% body fat. And this is, yeah, it's going to hurt my physique in the short term. I think there's pros to bear mode 100%. You're going to look a little bit bigger in clothes. Overall, you're just going to look a bit bigger. There's definitely pros to it, but let's be real, there's cons to it too. Especially for someone like me where I make a living off of my information and my physique. My face is getting puffy. I don't have any abs at all. You can't really see much definition, much vascularity in my physique. And these are all things that hurt the channel. People don't care to look at a physique like mine as much as they would someone that was super lean. So that's not to say that I'm pitying myself or I'm saying, poor me, what's the problem here? I'm willingly choosing to do this because in the long term, it's going to set me up better. The choice that I had to make was, do I accept the physique that I have as an intermediate that I built through powerlifting, power building, that in my opinion, in most people's opinions here, was subpar compared to what I was putting out for my strength? Do I accept that and say that's my end goal and just accept being lean and having a good but kind of average physique and run with that? Or do I suck it up in bulk and actually properly build muscle and really do my best to reach my genetic potential and then get lean and enjoy the gains that I've made from there? That's the mindset that I have here, and that's what I think most lifters make the wrong decision on. And you can tell this because they don't just say, all right, I achieved an intermediate physique and I'm satisfied with this. This is all I wanted. They always want more. They're watching fitness content. They're obsessed with how to make gains. They're obsessed with their diet. They're obsessed with the gym. But they don't actually commit to making that step that they need to get to that next level. They don't commit to the bulk. This is content creators and lifters that don't create content. So I think it's important for me, not just to show, like, yeah, you have to bulk to get to that next level, but actually talk about it too, because there's times where I'm like, my channel would grow more if I was leaner. I would look better right now if I was leaner. I'm close to the physique that I want, but I'm not there yet. So I'm not going to cut down and get super lean yet. It's not worth it to me because I know I still have room in the tank to keep growing. So all that just to kind of say, it's important to remember to have a long-term vision. Don't be afraid to gain a little bit of fat in the short term if it means more muscle down the road. Think long term and you'll be successful in lifting, I promise you.